So hello everyone and welcome to this video. So after a long hiatus that came about due to the number of updates that had been happening in the game in the past few months and due to the amount of work that I have had to do for university recently, Blitzguessr is back. So as promised last time, we are gonna play a balanced world, which is a map by Debre, and this is the map which so far has the fewest locations of those that we played, with 13,140, but these are very carefully handpicked, and as you might already know, many of them are very confusing and bait locations, for which this map is actually known for in the community. As always, you can play along. The links for the challenges are in the description, but make sure you play each round before you see it in the video. This time I've decided to open the locations after having guessed, just to see what I've missed while I was playing, which is very relevant for 10-second and 5-second games, and also to give a more thorough explanation of the clues available. So I think I've explained everything, so without any further ado, let's start. Okay, here we have some narrow road in the middle of nowhere. I think this should be Ireland because it's much greener than what you usually see in the UK. But actually it was in Belgium. I don't know how that was possible. These narrow roads and the hedgerows made me think British Isles straight away. This is a confusing location. This is a true Deborah location, as they call it in the GeoGuessr community. There are some gates which suggested Ireland too. It's really green. Usually it's a bit drier in the UK, especially in England. You have rolling hills too. Everything fits, just that it's in Belgium. I actually can't explain this location. What do we have here? We have some Iceland, I think. I think this is Iceland because of the long white dashes. We have some volcanic activity there. And it was in Akureyri in the north. Actually, that now that I think about it, it makes sense because we have mountains all in all directions basically, and we are in a city. I just panic guessed close to Reykjavik because that's where most of the locations are, but that's not a good strategy for this map, definitely. You also have a lot of these white houses, which are very common in Iceland. You have barren mountains, probably they're volcanoes, especially this one. You have this red border and yellow sign, which is also really common in Iceland, as well as these yellow poles, but I don't think you have time to actually think about that. Definitely you have this white car with long antenna that you always see in Iceland, I think. You can also see it in other places, but in Iceland it's really common. This we have the black car, so I think I'm gonna go Colombia. This looks east of the mountains. To me, we have these fences which look similar to Colombia. It was actually in the north. I'm getting like the area of the country wrong every time now. I don't know why, but the black car and the like subtropical feel here makes sense for Colombia. Also the fences, although that's not a really good meta. This could also be Brazil, for example, and sometimes Mexico, although to a lesser extent. Also, if you see these trees with very wide leaves, it's really common to see those in Colombia, especially in the north, but I didn't see them when I was looking at the location at first, so that's why I didn't guess north. Now that I think about it, I will probably would have done that. Now here we have this house, which is typical Bhutanese. We have also the white car. Nice to see Bhutan, knowing that it's really uncommon now in the game because of the ARI, of the tourism, Ministry of Tourism, I think it's called. But if you see this house with like these types of tiles and windows with white and brown like facades, that should be obviously in Bhutan. Also, you have this car, which is a bit weird. It's like the white car, but somehow it's faded. That's also really common in Bhutan, as well as these rocky walls. There's also this side here with the white stone, which is common in Bhutan. You can also see these stones in Sri Lanka, I think, but obviously the architecture doesn't fit. And on to the last location, I think. Okay, now we have some Argentina. Rio Gallegos is in the south, I think, so I'm gonna guess here. It also looks really barren, so Patagonia makes sense. And actually, that's a very good guess. I couldn't guess in the road because obviously with the time I have the 10 seconds, I'm not gonna be looking for a road because probably that's not the best strategy. But yes, we were here in Terceros, and I want to see what they have to the north. I didn't actually manage to grasp the cities that were mentioned here. There's Caleta Olivia, which is the biggest one. This one I did know, but it's also far away. Rio Gallegos is obviously the furthest away, and this didn't look like cold enough to be that far south. But yeah, there's obviously no trees here at all, except these planted trees over here surrounding the hotel. And also there are some mountains, but they're really small. They're obviously not the Andes. You usually see these close to Comodoro or Rivadavia, so that might be a good clue. So in general, I got just short of 20,000 points. If you got this correct, then kudos to you. And please explain how you did that because I was never thinking Belgium here. I probably wouldn't go even Belgium even in a streak after thinking about it for 10 minutes or something. And now I'm gonna move on to the 10 seconds NMPZ round. Good luck, everyone. So we start off with a yellow outer line and a white inner line. I think this is Israel because the road is better than in Jordan and it's very dry. I was thinking it was the border road. I didn't guess on it though because I didn't have the time to switch my marker. But here, the best clue, obviously if you know the lines here, you're in a good position. Also, there's some black and white chevrons there, which with these lines are exclusive to Israel. I didn't see them, but they're a good clue. There's also some bollards. You don't see that in Jordan or even if you consider South Africa, which is something that I wouldn't recommend because it's obviously very desert here and it doesn't look like the Kalahari Desert. And another thing I've noticed is that the lines in Israel are considerably thicker than in other countries that use the yellow outer lines. So that might be something to keep in mind. And as it was extremely dry, I was thinking towards the south because this is all desert. Although you can see some desert over here too close to the Dead Sea. This is extremely European. You have these small houses, one-story houses with sharp roofs. You have some border here, but I thought it's Slovakia here because the Poles were not Hungarian, even though the houses did match. There was a Catholic church here. We had this sign which didn't fit Czechia because usually in Czechia the white border is followed by uh like shorter red border, not these long one. Also, there are a lot of mountains in the background, which is not something that you see in Czechia, especially these tall mountains, which I think are the Tatra mountains, by the way. I don't know why I guessed in the flat part. I wasn't paying too much attention. Okay, this looks like Russia, and by the amount of small trees here and the fact that this looks a bit like what you see in northern Norway, I guess there, and that was an insane guess. I should have guessed on the road, but this area is pretty distinct. First of all, the best clue for Russia were obviously the bollards. These are exclusive to Russia, I think these with the red stripe connected to the top. Also, we had these small deciduous trees. I think they're birches, but I'm not really sure. We had some small mountains, like these that you see a lot in Norway. They're snow-capped and there's not too much trees to the top. I actually think there's none. And I think this area is pretty distinct. Once you see it, you usually get it. Well, this is Gen 2. We have cacti and we have a yellow and black chevrons. I think Mexico, maybe a bit towards the north. Oh, it was in Baja California. That was always an option, but I didn't want to risk that much. This was the view here. We had a lot of cacti. Like, if you see that many cacti, it's probably Baja California or Baja California Sur. Especially the latter is more distinct, although this was in Baja California. Gen 2 Americas and this chevron with the cacti, it could only be Mexico. And usually in Baja California, you only see Gen 2 or Gen 4, so that might be also a good meta. There was a board there, which was also the Mexican one, which is pretty short, completely white from bottom to top, except the bottom part, the lowest part is black, I think. But anyways, this was pretty easy to get Mexico, but kudos if you got Baja California in 10 seconds. And for the final location, we have some American style plate. This is really plains either. There's like unpaved roads, so I'm not gonna guess US, I'm gonna guess Canada. And Saskatchewan is always a good hedge for the plains, and that was actually true. Maybe I should have guessed more south because that's where most of the population is, and this looked pretty urban, at least suburban, I would say. The plate obviously was the short American style plate, and the pickup is really common in the Americas. Also, we had a warehouse, I think, somewhere, and this greenhouse here too. And that makes sense. I think this is pretty straightforward. There's not too much to explain here. So overall, this was actually more than 20,000 points. I wasn't expecting that, especially with this guess. Good luck, and I'm gonna move now to the hardcore 5-second rounds. Okay, here I'll go Indonesia. I'm gonna guess East Java. Oh, it was in Medan, Sumatra. This was a generic Indonesian urban location. I think I saw some, yes, some bumps here, which were black and yellow, which is really common to see, like bumps, guardrails, and even some chevrons like that in Indonesia. We were driving left, a lot of hats everywhere, a lot of motorbikes too. So this should be gettable even in 5 seconds, but getting Medan was quite hard because obviously this looks very generic. The best thing is to guess Java, especially knowing that it's flat. If this is generic European, I'm gonna guess Belgium. Oh, it was actually in Belgium. That was interesting. The fact that I went Belgium here instead of an Eastern or at least like Central European country like the Czech Republic, which also has a lot of forests like this with deciduous trees and Gem 4, was the fact that the road was really narrow. And I know that they covered a lot of Belgium forest with these roads in the last summer and also some in winter in 2020. So I thought this was the best idea. I wasn't expecting this to be that close to the Netherlands though, but this was mostly like luck. This could have been like something completely different, like for example Denmark. I don't think it could be Eastern Europe just because of the road or Central Europe, but this is basically, yeah, knowing the road and the rest of it was down to luck. This is basically Thailand. I think it's southern. And yeah, I was gonna guess Phuket, but obviously in 5 seconds that's never gonna happen. We had the yellow outer line, which puzzled me at the start, but when I saw this board, which was black and white, you usually see this either in Thailand or in Indonesia, but with the yellow line on the outside, not on the inside as you sometimes see in Indonesia. I obviously guessed in Thailand because like there's no outer yellow line in Indonesia. Also, if you manage to see this, this is also something you find in Thailand, the black, orange and black painting on the pole. These poles are classic Thai poles. And the reason I went south was because I saw the coastline and also one palm tree here. Okay, this is Brazil. I don't think it's Roraima. It's really red soil, so I'm gonna guess Bahia. It was Minas Gerais. Makes sense, especially in this mountainous area. But I thought it was more northern because like the road was in a bad condition and it was very red. Like usually in Minas Gerais, I thought the roads were in a better condition, especially with this clay over here and everything. The mountains made me think Roraima at first, but obviously with this road and like how generally mountainous this looked. In Roraima, you usually see a couple of mountains, but there's like flat ground, at least to the south or to the north, depending on where you are. And there's much less vegetation. It wouldn't be this green in Roraima, I think. It would be more like this, but this would be like all over the place and much more flat. And I think we are gonna go on to the last round now. Okay, this is, I think it's Ecuador, although I'm not completely sure. I think there's a border. Yes, it was in Ecuador. So here, basically, I first thought Chile somehow, just because we had the outer yellow lines that you have in Chile, although this was basically just the crosswalk, so that wasn't a good idea. Then I saw the antenna. I thought Colombia also with these chevrons, but I saw the board in the last moment, which saved me. This road is also concrete, and in Latin America, concrete roads are very common in Ecuador. So that's another clue. Obviously, this looked really mountainous, so it had to be in the center of the country. Another clue for Ecuador, like compared to Colombia, is you see a lot of white houses and also some brick houses, but gray brick houses. You see a lot of gray brick houses in Ecuador. You also see them in Mexico, but not in Colombia. But obviously, with the road and the board, it couldn't be Mexico. There's another white house here. So that's a good clue, I guess. So I think in general I did pretty well, with the exception of Medan, but that was impossible. Okay, this looks generic European. I think it's Sweden actually because of that street sign. I think it said Wagen there. And the vegetation pointed me more to the south because the trees were much taller. This looked like a typical residential area. We did have the short dashes on the side of the road. I obviously didn't notice that on time, but the street sign did make me think Sweden, and especially the font there is very distinct. Okay, this is Iceland. Oh, it was Eastern. I'm surprised. I again failed on Iceland geography, but this one was much more difficult than last one because there are some planted trees here. I first thought Sweden just because of the short dashes, but then I noticed the barren mountains and also the yellow bollards, so it had to be in Iceland, but most of the planted trees are on the side of the country. No, sorry, west side of the country, and there are some in the east, but that's obviously not the case usually. Okay, this looks like maybe something you see in Mexico. Oh, it was in Guatemala, interesting. There are not too much to explain here. This was a hard round. But I saw that the plate was short and we had some pines in the distance, so I did think Mexico. I did think southern Mexico because it looked like very green and subtropical, so I wasn't thinking anything north of Mexico City. Actually, my thought was Chiapas, but I didn't click there, I think. Were there any clues for Guatemala? I don't think so. The pole was not painted red there. The car was not visible, obviously, but the general area did look like Chiapas or Guatemala, so I think it makes sense. Okay, this looks like typical plains in America. I don't know why I went that north. I should have stayed in Nebraska or Kansas because it was extremely flat. Usually Montana has some hills. Maybe not Kansas, but I think I would have stayed in Nebraska. There was literally nothing here, and the lines were yellow, so it had to be the United States. And this looks like New Zealand borders, maybe Southern Ireland. Yeah, it was Southern Ireland. That makes some sense because it was completely dry and there are not too many trees, like except for the pines here, which might be planted, to be honest. There was nothing here. I did see the board, which confirmed my initial thoughts. So I guess this is an easy location. But overall, even though the score here is high, I'm not that happy with myself here. So the next time the map will be a more normal map now that we have played rural and balanced, which are like two of the most baity maps that you could say, I guess. And now we are gonna move on to an arbitrary world, which is a map that is pretty recent, but it has become very popular in the recent months. And it's basically very similar to a diverse world, but it has much more locations. And I don't think it has any broken locations like a diverse world has now. So that would be interesting. It's a mix of urban and rural. It has hard and easy locations, so it's pretty standard map. Thank you all for watching. Subscribe, like, and see you next time. Bye.